Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Really excited to be here with all of you. And then thanks for joining. So today we're going to be talking about the key steps to getting acquired. Obviously, like being, acquisitions, aggregators are kind of a big topic right now for obvious reasons. And there's a lot of things that you can do tactically and strategically to set yourself up for success. And Greg from Empire Flippers has some really great insights here. So excited, Greg, for you to be joining us. For those of you that may not know myself, my name is Andrew Weber. I'm the Director of Insights over here at Teikametrics. Greg, I mean, if you want to tell us, like, a quick blurb about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into obviously about Empire Flippers shortly.
Sure. So I'm the head of marketing over at Empire Flippers. So I lead the marketing team, help our sales team out. But one of the big parts of my job is doing what we're going to do today, which is educating the market, because a lot of people out there still don't know that they can even sell. But also people who do know they can sell, it's a highlight event in most entrepreneurs' life. So it's not something they're particularly familiar with, other than beyond the concept that they can sell, right? So that's my goal, whether an entrepreneur uses us or not as their broker, is to help them make the best possible choice when they go to sell their business and really get that life-changing exit. So that's what I do.
Awesome, love it. All right, so let's get into it in terms of just from a agenda point of view. So first, Greg, I think and this is a great point. Is Greg's going to go through how to set what your personal goals are for an acquisition, and then kind of work towards those. So kind of a framework for, because not every acquisition is the same, and your goals for an acquisition may be very different than someone even in your same industry. So go through that. Then I think this is like super interesting. We're going to go through the characteristics of businesses that really closed quickest this past year. And I'm going to kind of highlight, in addition to what Greg's talking about, kind of some more market level insights around what that looks like and how you can do something about that. That kind of dovetails nicely into kind of, okay, things operationally you should be doing to get your business ready to be acquired, by any number of firms out there. But there's some really key things that you should be doing, and they may be surprising to you potentially. And then, okay, now you've kind of got that in order. What are really kind of a checklist, kind of specific tasks you want to tackle before your acquisition to really maximize your valuation as much as possible? And then we'll get into Q&A. And on that last point, a couple things. So first, on the Q&A side, you'll see a questions box either below or on the side of your screen, depending on what client you're using to watch this webinar. And you can ask those questions at any point during the webinar. We'll get to them towards the end, but you don't have to wait towards the end. So if a question comes up on something where either Greg or myself is talking about, feel free to pop that question in, and we'll answer that. Again, answer that when we get towards the end. And then additionally, just as a heads up, this webinar is being recorded, and everyone here will receive a recording of this webinar along with a slide deck for your review roughly 24 hours after the conclusion of this webinar. So with that, just a quick note on Teikametrics for folks that may not know about us. So we're a software platform, but we kind of team that, whether it's you're just using software, but maybe you need that extra hands-on keyboard help. We have expert analysts on hand to really help grow your sales across the really most important marketplaces, Amazon, Walmart, eBay. And really our focus is on advertising and then pairing that kind of with market intelligence, other data to really help grow what you're trying to do on a product by product basis, because not every product's the same. We're actually going to be talking about that. So you want to have really product specific goals, and that's something that our software kind of helps with, our analyst team helps with, and you can see some of the brands we work with here. And Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about Empire Flippers, then we'll get right into the content.
Sure. So if anyone's not familiar with Empire Flippers, we are the largest curated marketplace in the world now when it comes to people buying and selling online businesses. And some people get us confused now with the rise of the aggregators, thinking that we might be an aggregator, but that's not what we do. We're an M&A firm, similar to a realtor. Like if you went to go buy a house, you use a realtor to buy that house most likely, or sell a house as well. That's what we do. And over the years, we've sold over $324 million worth of businesses, and this is already out of date because we sell businesses almost every day of the week. I believe this year, every single business day, we sold at least one business. And we have one of the largest liquidity networks in the industry. We have over $4.6 billion, which that's the official number, but the real number is actually much, much larger because pretty much every aggregator shops with us, and some of them have raised over $1 billion in terms of the valuation at this point. And that doesn't even include all the ultra high net worth individuals that also buy from us. A lot of people just assume it's always aggregators, but there's actually a huge swath of buyers that are not aggregators as well that shop with us. And something that's really cool, I actually pulled this stat recently for this specific webinar for Amazon FBA entrepreneurs, is we're helping to create a millionaire every 11.3 days. And when I say that, I mean they exited their FBA business for 7 figures, likely multiple 7 figures, which is huge because I've been in this industry since 2016. Before FBA businesses were even a thing, brokers were even selling. We were the first ones to start selling them. And back then, no one, like people just didn't think you could even buy and sell it. They thought it was against Amazon's terms of service. So it's really cool to see how much the industry has changed and matured over that period of time. And one last thing that we think is pretty cool, we made it on the Inc. 5000 for 5 years now. We've hit that 5 times. Would have been 6, but unfortunately I got it in late the previous year. So, but yeah, we made it again this year. So that just got announced a couple weeks back. Cool. You want me to just go into it, Andrew?
Yeah, I'd say just let's get right into it.
All
it's not
right,
wasting any
cool.
time for sure.
Awesome. If you see me having a little bit of a delay, which I think I might have one, it's because I'm in Alaska right now, and Alaska internet is not fantastic, so please forgive me. But yeah, let's talk about this. So the first step when it comes to selling is nothing to do with your evaluation, has nothing to do with who you're going to sell, and has everything to do with your own goals. So let's talk about the very first step before we even talk about the goals, and that is why sell your business in the first place. For most of you, you are solo entrepreneurs, you're bootstrap, you built something amazing from the ground up in a difficult market, right? Amazon FBA is complicated and competitive. And a lot of you started your entrepreneurial career for that freedom that entrepreneurship allows. Like, maybe it's to quit your 9 to 5, escape the commute, all that kind of stuff. And the side hustle grew into an enterprise, right? Well, one of the things, and you probably know this if you're a successful entrepreneur, is there's some cracks in that theory about being the master of your own fate as an entrepreneur. Because while you may have given up the 9 to 5 grind, now you have a new boss, and a much more unforgiving boss in many ways, and that's called Amazon's algorithm, right? Or Google's algorithm you're using any SEO, or Facebook's algorithm you're running Facebook ads, right? These are high stress things for us e-commerce entrepreneurs, right? And they're always changing. Now we have to deal with logistics too. Supply chain issues are coming up, right? So these are all important reasons why to consider selling in the first place. Because when you sell your business, is actually when you get to have that entrepreneurial goal and dream of really controlling your own destiny. Because now the algorithms can't even touch you, right? You cashed out on that equity. So that is a major reason to consider selling. And I always tell entrepreneurs, don't fall in love with your brand, fall in love with your business model. And I'll get into why I say that here in a second. But the other thing I want you to know as a FBA entrepreneur looking to sell your business, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but it is quite common, is entrepreneurial depression. So, someone sells their business with us, say it was like $2-3 million, right? Changes their life, right? That's more money than most people retire on, right? And they get it in their, maybe late 20s, early 30s, early 40s by selling that business. Huge. And then a few days later or a week later, they're suddenly depressed. They're like, what's going on? And you might be wondering, well, why is that? And it's because they had no real goals outside of the money of selling that business. So they become listless because most of us as entrepreneurs have 60% or usually more like 80 or 90% of our net worth tied up into our business, right? We're putting it all back in for growth. Now suddenly you don't have it. This thing that's occupying every waking moment of your life is suddenly gone, right? So that is why I talk about personal and business goals all the time as the foundational step. Whether it's you want to go on that dream vacation. Maybe you have a little $80,000, $150,000 FBA business and funds that kind of thing, or buying a house, or maybe you have business goals such as starting a whole suite of FBA brands or some other business, or investing into real estate, or whatever it is. The important thing to have is personal and business goals beats timing the market every single time. Right now, valuations are the highest I've ever seen them, but that doesn't mean you should sell. You should sell if you get closer to your personal or business goals by selling that. So I always tell people, have a plan, because that plan will defeat the entrepreneurial depression. You'll be able to hit the ground running with that life-changing capital, and you'll be much, much happier for it. So don't worry about the market, worry about you. That's the most important thing. And this leads into what I kind of hinted at earlier about the doors of possibilities. When you do sell your business, this is the largest life-changing capital you probably have ever received. And if you have a good plan, that opens up the doors of possibilities for you that just simply did not exist for you before. For example, we have a lot of sellers that they'll sell a seven-figure business with us, and then they take a portion of that money and they start buying, say, a couple $200,000 FBA businesses, and they know how to optimize them. They know how to grow those businesses, right? And a year later, now they can sell those businesses for 500, 600K extra, right? These are the doors of possibilities that open up. Buying real estate free and clear, building out a new stock investment portfolio with that large capital of lump sum money can open up doors that simply did not exist. Even if you're starting a brand new business from scratch, right? Like now you have a budget, which none of us had that when we first started, right? We're putting on credit cards, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is the power of selling. The rest of this presentation is all about knowing the road before driving down it. And what I mean by that is, again, this is going to be a highlight event in your life when you win or if you do sell. And so it's good to know, what does that road look like? Because there is a lot of different narratives out there that might get you a worse deal if you believe in them. And some of them are quite compelling with some of these myths, and we'll get into those as we go on.
Yeah, some great stuff, and thanks for going into this. I mean, I think the personal goals, obviously, if you've been on our webinars before, I think we haven't really talked about like, oh, let's like maybe look towards yourself and think about this. But I think to your point, it's like it's easy to get really just focused on a number versus kind of what you want to do with that number long term and how that's going to help you, fulfill kind of what you want to do professionally. And I think it's a really great point, I think, to put out there.
Yeah, it's
So let's
something people
kind of,
don't think
yeah.
about. Entrepreneurs were always so focused on the productivity and, like, the numbers and growth, all this stuff. But I do find it very important to keep this stuff in mind. All right. Well, speaking of selling, so you might be wondering, okay, well, what do we need to do to make this doors of possibilities open up for us, right? Well, we analyzed, I had my team look at all the FBA businesses that we sell, including our exit planning specialists, to give you guys the best possible stats here to help you out and make a good decision. So if you want to sell your FBA business quickly, these are some of the best things you can have going for your business right here. And that's a high quantity of reviews with an average of 4.3 stars. And why high quantity, we are meaning hundreds of reviews, thousands even better. The more the merrier, right? As long as they're real reviews, no black hat stuff, obviously. But that's great social proof, right? And that social proof equates into good branding, and that good branding equates into multiple growth opportunities, not just on the Amazon platform, but potentially on Walmart, potentially on your own e-commerce store too, because you can use that branding and that love for your product in other areas, right? So high quality reviews is a really good sign of a good brand and a good product, which leads to a better valuation, and people want that. Next is product line expansion. Is there room to expand? Because like what I just said, a lot of times buyers, they don't want to buy something that's wicked optimized, where everything is optimized to the nth degree, because they want some of that growth for themselves, right? So it's okay to leave some growth opportunities on the table when you go to sell. And in fact, that could actually make your business more attractive, because the buyer can obviously see where to take the business next, right? If you're optimized completely, that doesn't mean you won't be able to sell. You can still definitely sell. There's always more growth opportunities, but it's just less clear to the buyer. So you have to go into it knowing that. Product line expansion is a great growth channel. Next is low competition. I mentioned earlier, it has gotten more competitive in the FBA space. So, if you are in if you start off in a low competition, maybe you're in a high competition space now, right? But low competition is great for the largest swath of buyers. Now, if you're talking to an aggregator, competition won't be as important because they're going to have the manpower and the firepower to really compete. But if you want to appeal to the broadest buyer pool, being in a lower competition is fantastic. And as far as niches, I get asked this question all the time. Greg, what is the absolute best niche for me to sell in? And the answer is it doesn't matter. The only two niches that really matter that people don't tend to like is apparel and electronics. Apparel has so many different child variations and SKUs that adds to the inventory management issues. And then like the electronics, obviously they can break and there's extra special stuff to do. And usually electronics are ultra competitive anyways. So those are two niches that a lot of buyers just don't enjoy participating in, not all. And that brings me to another important point. Everything I'm saying on here, there's 100% always going to be a caveat because every buyer is different and they have their own personal and business goals, right? So this is not like you must do this. This is just in general good guidelines to follow. So next is strong branding. I already mentioned why that was important with quantity of reviews, but this is good stuff. A lot of FBA entrepreneurs, they'll come to us and be like, yeah, I'm well diversified in terms of traffic and revenue channels. And then we find out they're like 99% Amazon and 1% Shopify. Like that's like not really meaningful to a buyer, right? That's still just FBA business. But you can prove strong branding by having that multi-channel aspect of saying like, even just 10% or 15% coming from a Shopify, Magento store, or Walmart, other channels. And that shows your brand translates off of Amazon, which also shows you have a strong brand, right? And multi-channel in general is going to give you a higher valuation due to traffic diversity and just revenue diversity. In terms of actual number of products, you want 20 SKUs or less ideally, and the real sweet spot tends to be between 3 to 8 products. And usually out of those products, there's 1 or 2 that are what we call a hero product that's really carrying a lot of the business, that's driving a lot of the growth, and the other products are almost like accessories to this hero product. But the reason why 3 to 8 is the sweet spot is because if you have a one product only business, a lot of buyers will look at that as a very risky endeavor to invest in you. Like if you have a $800,000 FBA business or a $5 million FBA business and you have one product, well, what happens if that product goes out of style? Is it a fad? When if competition comes in, you have nothing else to sell, so no product line expansion happening, right? That's a big risk. And on the flip side, you shouldn't be going like, oh, I just need a ton of products to increase my valuation, because the more you increase that, the more management it is, and the less attractive your business is. So if you have a $100,000 FBA business with 200 different products, that is a very unattractive business for most buyers looking at that, right? The valuation doesn't make sense with how much product management you have to do. And this is something, Andrew, I believe you would agree on, is the last one is under-optimized PPC, pictures, and descriptions. This again goes back to the growth opportunity thing. You could leave that under-optimized if you want to sell your business used as a growth thing, or you can use the type of stuff that Teikametrics is talking about to optimize that, which will lead to more revenue, which of course will lead to a bigger valuation.
Yeah, and I mean, and to that last point, I saw one question kind of coming from Lane, just why would I want to leave money on the table? And the answer is you don't. The idea is that this is kind of, if it's under optimized, it's largely not due to your apathy. It's due to the fact that there may be some additional things that you could be doing that you're not. But I think, the idea though is that you as a business always ideally, right, want to be making yourself better. These are some characteristics, I think, again, contextualizing these are things that Greg, when you went back, you kind of looked, it's like, okay, of the businesses that really had a quick time to close, their listing went up and they closed, these are some of the kind of the common characteristics. Not to say that they didn't have these, they didn't eventually close, right? It's that these are areas where buyers are coming in, they're seeing, oh, that's a very easy decision for me because I know I can make a difference there and grow the business. But that's to say, from your perspective as a business owner, one that is actually running that right now, no, ideally, right, you want to be executing, I think, on each of these things because it's going to help your business grow. And ideally, right, in terms of maximizing your valuation, right, a lot of these just relate to growing the business, right? And the bigger your business is, that's going to help obviously with a valuation perspective. It's just the closing time, maybe a little bit more, elongated, but that could be okay, right? I mean, depending on what you're looking for. So, but let's go up into, and I think what Greg was talking about in kind of strong branding. So that can show up in a couple different ways. So what we did here is we looked at kind of across the top 10,000 terms on Amazon and tried to kind of break them up generally by category, right? What vertical does this term relate to, and then also then splitting them up versus branded terms, right? In toys and games, that would be like Lego or Hot Wheels, right? Versus unbranded terms like toys for 5-year-olds, right? And what you see is kind of the number of those terms by category in that top 10,000. So there's kind of two ways you could say strong branding is showing up, and there's kind of a way you can evaluate your own business. Is in the fact that, okay, well, are my branded terms showing up amongst these top terms? Obviously, that's a very good indication. Okay, there's strong brand presence. People are coming to Amazon and searching for my brand at very high rates. That's a great, obviously, that's like a very like kind of number one, like in terms of like showing your branding's work. The other way is on these category terms that you know are very powerful, are you ranking well organically in particular, right? And obviously that's a sometimes a long process, right? You're obviously going to start out, you will not be ranking on these top terms in terms of top volume category level terms, but if you kind of have a system in place, it's very easy to, I think, show that's going to be one of your kind of biggest drivers of revenue. But then it's easy to show a potential buyer, say, hey, look, I know I have strong branding because maybe people don't know my brand name right off the top of the hat, but I'm ranking top of search organically across these very key terms in my specific subcategory. And this term happens to be, very popular on Amazon. That's a way you can kind of showcase your strong branding. And obviously, just in general, right, those are the terms you really want to hit on from a sponsored products perspective. Because, right, these are the ones that from a, if your brand is not just top of people's minds, people are searching for you at high rates, like your own branded terms, this is where you're going to drive volume. You're going to drive volume from these very highly trafficked generic terms. And yes, those tend to be more expensive, but right, those have ancillary benefits, right? If you're able to advertise effectively on those and gain volume, Amazon factors that into the algorithm. Hey, this product is relevant for these terms. We're going to rank you, more, highly. Obviously, it's something that, especially during product launch in particular, you really want to hit on these generic terms to kind of drive that volume, drive review counts to kind of help you along the way. But this kind of, again, contextualizes some of the points around branding here. The other thing, we talked about under-optimized. Now, under-optimized in terms of PPC, I think it's like, again, I don't think it's ever in your benefit to essentially intentionally under-optimize yourself in hopes of a sale. I think that's it's probably not going to do what you think it will. It's more, again, think of this as the fact that, there may be opportunities where you're like, I think I'm doing the best I can, but, I have only limited resources, so this is what I'm doing. I don't have staff, or I have very limited staff. So in that sense, it's under-optimized from the sense that, okay, maybe you're not doing every single thing a company that would have hundreds of employees could potentially do, but there's some under-optimization there. On the imagery front, what you actually find is that a lot of sellers, even amongst kind of top sellers, are actually not doing everything they possibly could when it comes to imagery in terms of what people are looking for. So this is a study conducted by Salsify. I was actually I helped run this when I was back with them a couple of years ago. But we were looking at, okay, we looked across the top top 10% of products by sales rank across all these categories. And we looked at the average number of images on those pages, the pages in the top 10% in sales rank in that category. And then we compared it on a survey basis. After we run a survey across, I think it was about 3,000 consumers. And we said, okay, how many images do you want to see when you're looking on Amazon before you make a purchase? And the average was 6, which is actually a lot. And what we actually found that even amongst those top sellers, that average actually came in below that amount. So there's something to be said that even if your product is top selling, there could be more that you could be doing. And I mean, sellers can or buyers can come in rather and decide, oh, actually, there is more that we could do. From an imagery point of view. I mean, in general, kind of delving into this data a little bit more, it wasn't shown here, but across every single vertical that we looked at as part of these studies, and again, you can see some of them here. Not only, right, were more images associated with better selling product pages from a top 10% versus bottom 10% of sales rank across categories, across price points, but that was also true in terms of description length. Description length was always longer on the better selling product pages than poor selling product pages. Bullet count was always higher. The use of A+ content was dramatically higher in that top 10%, or A plus content as you were, in that top 10% sales rank group for the bottom 10%. So more content is always better, generally. I mean, that's kind of just a general rule. And it's also to the point that even if your product page is performing well, there may be things that you're doing that are, again, you're even still not quote unquote best practice, would be good enough, but there are other things that you could be doing. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up as well. And when it comes to PPC, going back to PPC, these are kind of audits that we'll run for certain clients and kind of prospects as we're in the sales process with them. But we'll kind of look across their their advertising portfolio. Okay, where are they advertising and where are they putting the most budget that they're kind of also signing based on organic rank and then also expected conversion rate, kind of the value per click. And this is generally best practice when you're instituting kind of a value-based bidding program, right? If a click is on a competitor's term, that's naturally much more valuable than a click on your own branded term where you're potentially, right, cannibalizing your own product, right? You're cannibalizing your own sale with a paid search. Not that you shouldn't necessarily do that, right? There is a degree of band defense, but you have to be nuanced about it. You have to understand where that value is. And what we find is traditionally, you find a lot of people in this case, right? You can see they're kind of over-invested in automatic campaigns where, in short, essentially, right, it's like, okay, well, these are running great. I'm getting good results, so I shouldn't touch it. When actually the case is you should, because you can optimize better when something's in a manual campaign. And then additionally, you also find, especially people coming from agencies in particular, you find them really over-invested in branded campaigns. And the reason is because if you're with an agency typically is going to be incentivized to bid efficiently, be efficient with your ad dollars. Well, guess what's most efficient? A branded ad, because if someone comes to your branded term, they're likely already in the market, they're going to click on the ad and they're going to buy. So it's a very efficient ad, yet have you really driven any kind of incremental growth? The answer is very likely not. Vis-a-vis a generic term in particular, which are typically higher volume, as we saw kind of in the earlier slide. And if someone goes to a generic term, right, they don't necessarily have a brand in mind as they're searching. So your ability to get in front of them and convert that into a sale has inherently more value than a branded term where, again, you may convert them organically anyway. So this is something where, again, this is an example here of the idea that even if you feel, hey, I'm in a pretty good place with my advertising, there may be inefficiencies that you may not be aware of, and some of our audits kind of help kind of unveil that a little bit. So I'll pass it back to you, Greg, to kind of talk about kind of operationally, kind of going away from CPC a little bit, but what you should be thinking about kind of as you gear it up.
Yeah. One thing before I go into these operational tips is to answer that question, like, why would everyone want to leave money on the table? And I think, what you said, Andrew, both to his answer and what you just said now, kind of hints at my own response there. But I always challenge entrepreneurs to think about like two things when it comes to this, when it comes to selling your business, and that's the opportunity costs and your own skills. So if everything Andrew just showed you there was like way over your head, for example, and like obviously you can hire Teikametrics to help you with this stuff, but let's say you didn't have Teikametrics and that was way over your head, should you spend the time getting better at that? Maybe not. Like maybe it takes you a few months to learn and that's okay, or maybe you never really learn it and then you miss the opportunity to sell. So I had a friend, he grew a very big media business. What wasn't an FBA business? We sell all kinds of businesses, not just FBA businesses, but he grew a very big media business that had a valuation of close to 7 figures, closing in on it. But he wanted to get just a little bit extra juice, which meant he had to like change up a bunch of link structures for SEO. And during that time, Google did an update to their algorithm completely out of his control that halved his valuation because he lost half of his SEO traffic overnight as he was trying to squeeze that last bit of juice. So was that worth it? Probably not in his mind, hindsight, right? Hindsight's always 20/20, of course. So again, I always challenge you to think about your personal and your business goals, because at the end of the day, whenever you sell a business, it is very likely you're leaving money on the table somewhere, right? Even if you did everything on that list I just said and you optimize the PPC, there's still tons of other growth channels like Shopify, Facebook, using Facebook ads, Walmart. There's so many different growth opportunities. You're almost always going to leave money on the table at the end of the day. So that's why, again, bring it back to your personal and business goals. Is it worth the opportunity cost of delaying getting to those goals by trying to get as much money as possible in every single way? some of us just aren't very good at some of the stuff. Like I'm not a PPC ninja, for example. I'm more of a content marketing person. So I love that Andrew said more content is always better. I agree. But you know, it probably wouldn't be worth my time, for example, to optimize you know, the logistics supply chain, because that's just not my natural skill. Now, if I had a team who could do it, sure. But that's kind of a little bit more of a nuanced answer there, like that, and that's why I really harp on the personal and business goal thing, and making sure you're getting closer to it by selling your business. But yeah, let's talk about some of these operational tips. So these are just some tips that as you are getting closer to an exit, you should be considering adding into your mix. So obviously, this is the hardest one right now, which is a smooth handoff supply chain. You know, like make it easy for the buyer, which right now is not easy for anyone. So this is a tough one to do. But if you could do it, that would be fantastic and makes you much more attractive. And all these tips are make you as attractive as possible, which allows you to sell your business in a much smoother process. It doesn't always increase your valuation, but it can help you have a smoother sell because of that attractive factor. So next is solid quality control, sorry, showing decreased returns. So this is just a good thing to have. Every FBA entrepreneur should be doing some kind of quality control that helps decreasing those returns on defective products, or you know, maybe the customer didn't think they got what was advertised to them, all that kind of stuff. You want to have solid quality control, and more importantly, as I mentioned at the end of the slide, detailed SOPs of how that works, along with every other aspect of your process. A real quick note on SOPs, on standard operating procedures. Consider them like the buyer's manual to your business. That if you gave them this manual and you told them nothing else, they could run the business about 80% as good as you. Obviously not 100% because they don't know all the nuances of the business, but an SOP should be as good as giving it to someone, and they can do it ideally about 80% as well as what you can. Next is 3PL over owned warehouses. Most savvy FBA entrepreneurs are already doing this, but every now and then I do run across an FBA entrepreneur that is storing everything in with Amazon, which is, you know, a big cost burden, right? Or doing something a bit stranger, like sending the product to themselves and then shipping it out. Which people who are bootstrapping and they're very small, that can make sense. But when it comes to actually selling your business, it's good to have this 3PL. And I've seen some entrepreneurs do a weird reversal where they actually get rid of their 3PL to save costs, but then they just get discounted by the buyer anyways, and probably even more because now the buyer just has to go set up 3PL, right? So you don't really save anything by not having this when you go to sell your business. Next is cutting experimental marketing 6 to 12 months out. I'm a big believer in experimenting, and I believe based on what Andrew just said, so is Andrew. And marketing, a lot of it's always experimentation. But when it comes to actually selling, you want to focus on what is working now rather than really going hard at some experimental channel or experimental campaign that you have no data on yet. Because you're selling the business anyways. You can tell the buyer, hey, I was planning on doing this, and that can act as a growth opportunity where they get to sell themselves on the potential of your business, right? But that doesn't mean you have to do it. So when you're getting closer to sell 6 to 12 months out, kill those experimental marketing campaigns and kill your dead or slow selling products, ideally liquidating them. There are services that can help you liquidate these products. There's also tactics that I believe Andrew and I were talking offline that you can use with PVC to help you liquidate those products, because most buyers are just going to discount you anyways on them, and that could be a major sticking point of why your business doesn't sell in a smooth and easy manner. So it's good to get rid of those products. Now, if you're unsure, because so every now and then we have a product that isn't selling, but it's not because it's a bad product, it's just because we're bad at marketing it for whatever reason. So if you're unsure of is this a good product or not, then I would invite you to reach out to Andrew at Teikametrics or me or my team to make sure, like, before you actually go and do a liquidation campaign, because maybe you just need to optimize something on your marketing, right? So keep that in mind too. The other thing, and should be fairly common sense, but a lot of sellers forget this because we're all busy, right? You're wearing a ton of different hats, and that's explanations of dips and spikes, both in your traffic, but also in your revenue, right? Like maybe you have a period of the year that's unusually high in revenue because there's some seasonality to your product. And if you can show year over year that seasonality, and with that seasonality growing, and you have that explanation, that all makes sense. Likewise, maybe you have a dip, right? If you have no explanation for a big dip in revenue, that buyer is going to be wondering, okay, well, what's happening here? So it's good to log all this stuff. Maybe that dip is because of the supply chain issues. That was Amazon's fault, right? That had nothing to do with your business. Or maybe it's because you did some bad inventory forecasting and it's stocked out, and the buyer will want to know about all of this, right? One thing that entrepreneurs tend to do when they go to sell the business is they try to dress up their business as pretty as possible, which is the wrong thing to do. You want to show the buyer all the warts, all the badness, all the ugly stuff, the mistakes you've made, all of that on a silver platter to the buyer, because one, the buyer's going to figure it out anyways if they're a savvy buyer. So you might as well just tell them. It won't hurt you by telling them. They're going to figure it out during their due diligence, right? But the other thing that, like a lot of sellers, they'll dress up that business to be perfect because they want to sell on potential. Like, this is the next $1 million idea kind of thing, right? And then the buyer's like, well, your P&L says the next like $400,000 idea right now, right? So it's always a bad move to sell on potential, because they're going to give you a lower deal. But if you give them the mistakes you made, they sell themselves on the potential of your business, right? They see you're making these logistic issues, like you have great PPC, or maybe you're using Teikametrics and it's really optimized, but your forecasting, your inventory forecasting is not up to snuff. That is great for them. It builds the potential in their own mind and makes your business more attractive to them that way. So telling people the bad stuff of your business can actually be quite helpful to sell your business in that manner, because again, the buyer sees the growth opportunity.
Awesome. And yeah, like to kind of build on some of this, we talked about liquidation. Like I'll kind of get into that a little bit. Setting a good foundation here is really important. I think, and you talked about this, is the buyer's going to figure this out anyway, and giving them, I mean, not just the warts on the silver platter, but also kind of the structure that will help, I think, facilitate, like, this is how it works. I mean, to your point about SOPs, like if you get these building blocks around PPC in particular on Amazon in order, it's going to make that process a lot easier. So, I mean, a lot of this relates to campaign structure. Campaign structure on Amazon is super, super important, I think, to really growing your business. I mean, there's so many businesses out there that come into us at Teikametrics, and they're in decent shape when you just look at just total GMV, but they're completely under optimized when it comes to PPC, because they kind of did it one way and it was working good enough in their own kind of realm, and they weren't really thinking bigger picture about, okay, how do I get this better? A lot of, whether it's just like over investing in branding campaigns, over investing in automatic campaigns, maybe just a wide swath where they're bidding against a ton of different keywords, and actually that's not terrific, especially when trying to grow. Good campaign structure matters, and it gives you that foundation to be agile, to make those changes when you need to. And when we talk about liquidation, that relates, and also profit. This relates to setting and calculating a maximum ad cost of sale, or a max, that kind of helps you target that right bid for that keyword, for that product. Because that same keyword for one product versus another in your same catalog could be different, right? What that right bid is. If the margins are different, if the product life cycle is different, you want that bid to reflect that reality. And when I talk about the campaign structure, agility matters, right? Amazon is a moving target. It never stays the same. And you need to be able to adjust quickly when market conditions change, as new trends develop, as consumer behavior changes. So whether that's like, okay, hey, this term is no longer converting as well, you want to pare your bid down because it's not converting as well, or conversely, hey, this term I was bidding against, the conversion rate's going up, conversion volume's going up, I want to bid higher to capture those conversions at a profitable rate. Like, you need to be able to have those levers. Okay, so calculating max targets. So your base max target, and again, these are guidelines, so don't think of these as gospel, but it's kind of a good guidelines as you're kind of setting these or thinking about them. Is right, because in a given ad group, you want to set these on a per ad group basis. So your base max target, let's say your pre-ad gross margin, before you do any ads, what's your gross margin? It's 20%. Your base max target is 20%. But you get a modifiers. Again, in this case, you could do this again based on keyword type. There's other modifiers, but you listen on your goal. What is your goal for that product? If it's a launch, you need to likely go over, right? You need to spend, you need to drive volume. show Amazon that your product converts, it's relevant for those keywords you're bidding on. You get reviews, so then that way it's going to make your life a whole lot easier because you're actually going to be ranking organically, higher up a month, 2 months from then. It'll just make your life a lot easier. You won't have to spend as highly on advertising throughout that whole process. Okay, let's say you've had a successful product launch. It's ranking on page one. Maybe it's not top of search, but it's it's on page one. It's getting clicks. You're getting conversions. Now you're in a growth phase. I want to grow this product, but I don't need to be so aggressive as it was in the launch phase, but I need to be at least a little bit aggressive because I'm still not the top dog here. I need to keep growing this product. And then you get to the point where maybe your product now is like, hey, I'm ranking very highly on these really key terms. I'm getting some branded traffic. Okay, now on those terms, especially those category terms where this is again about driving volume, now you can be a little more conservative. I can say, well, I already know I'm going to get conversions. I can tighten the strings a little bit because I can kind of maximize my profit here. And so those are kind of three things. But liquidating products is a whole different story. If you're getting a product that is not selling, but I want to get rid of this in advance of a sale because I just feel that this is going to kind of be a drag on kind of the total profitability, et cetera, or whatever the case may be. If you need to liquidate products, you may need to advertise to do that. And keep in mind that what we've seen is sometimes that ACoS level that you're looking at to liquidate those products, it may be similar to kind of that growth phase where it's roughly around that 30% max target. So just keep that in mind. It may be necessary to do that. Now, again, it's going to be very based on, again, where your business is and where those certain products are, but just be aware that that is a possibility. So hopefully this is kind of helpful as you're kind of setting your kind of game plan up here, but I thought this would be helpful, kind of a little worksheet, again, not as gospel, but as good guardrails here. Okay, so for each product, you want to do this for each product. What's your max? What's your max for that product at this point in time? That's going to change, but for this point in time, where is it? And then as you move forward, kind of how are you going to make those adjustments? And again, that's based on your life cycle stage. If it's a new product, you may need to go past that margin to drive sales volume, but you want to have the guardrails. How much do you want to do that and for how long? What's that going to look like? And you can look at this either based on prior experience with earlier product launches. You can look at, again, if you run this for a couple of weeks, how is that progressing? What are you seeing from a change in sales rank perspective? How does that relate to what you're seeing on the top of search or on page one of the searches you want to rank on? That can help kind of set guardrails here. What's your profitability tolerance? So keywords, that's kind of a separate area, but it's important is brand, competitor, generic. You want to have kind of different tolerances for those. But it should be based on what's your bestseller rank, what's your organic rank on key terms. That should help you kind of contextualize when you need to be more aggressive, less aggressive, based on those metrics. And obviously, undergirding everything is price. Price matters. And if your price is not competitive, that's not good, right? You want to have a price that is competitive with other folks that you're competing against. So that way, again, you put yourself in a better position when it comes to garnering sales, kind of whether or not, right, you have to really like amp up or kind of tamp down the spend, right? If you got a good competitive price, it doesn't obviously be exact, but it needs to be competitive. So again, you're not under the gun when it comes to actually just driving sales organically, right? You want to put yourself in the best position. So some final strategic guidelines, and then I think we'll get kind of towards the end of the presentation. But conversion rates, that's something I really want everyone here to focus on. I think as you're thinking about what you want to optimize towards and everything, is that's the way you're seeing an ad is working well. Conversion rates, it's going to be, you're going to see that before efficiency metrics like ACoS, which have a longer lead time to calculate. So just keep an eye on conversion rates. If something in an automatic campaign is seeing high conversion rates, pretty good conversion volume, move that to a manual campaign. It will work better. Place smart defense on your branded terms. So that means not advertising your best-selling product on top of search, because that best-selling product is going to rank #1 for your branded terms anyway. Advertise newer products that you want to drive volume for. Advertise higher margin products, right? Maybe longer tail products that you want to liquidate, right? Those are the things you want to advertise in your own branded terms. You can kind of play smart defense, but not be cannibalizing sales, especially if you're top selling products. And this again, for newer brands, newer products, those generic terms, those most popular ones, which again, you can get through Amazon Brand Analytics. You can find out kind of what's the most popular for your specific category. Those are what are most valuable. Pick that small basket of keywords that you really want to focus on and be willing to spend to win, because that's what's going to drive volume. I mean, just bottom line, it's not going to be a branded terms if it's a new product because people aren't searching for that yet. And then, Greg, pass it off to you kind of after I've gone through the PPC angle, but the kind of other checklists you should think about kind of as you're getting ready for acquisition.
Yeah, what you said about newer brands there, Andrew, I think that's great. I see a lot of kind of going back to what you said with agencies always bidding on brand terms. I'm definitely familiar with that with my own experience of hiring agencies for Empire Flippers, and yeah, if you're a brand new product, like your brand isn't going to do a lot for you in terms of the keywords often, right? So I think that's fantastic advice. Um, so let's talk a bit more about the pre-acquisition checklist. So this is the type of stuff to keep in mind, like right before you're going to go sell. So again, this would probably be 3 to 6 months out, depending on the complexity of your business. It could be longer if you have more to do. Andrew just went over some great tips on liquidating dead SKUs, and I put it in here twice because it is an important thing to remember. But the key thing at this phase in your business is to focusing on those core tasks. What is making you money right now? What PPC campaigns are making you money right now? What content is working for your business right now? Don't focus on any experimental stuff that you've never tried before. You can write them down, put them as a plan to give them to the buyer, but really focus on the core. How can you shape up your logistics better? What can you do in terms of packaging? Maybe you can decrease the packaging size a little bit. Core tasks. That's all you should be focusing on as you get closer to an actual exit. And again, you probably will leave money on the table because there's always new growth opportunities, right? Don't let that bother you. As long as your business is where it can help you to get to your personal or business goals, that's what's really important here. The other thing is keeping a minimum of 3 months of inventory in stock, because this is an extremely important thing. The worst thing that could happen is, say you have a $7 million Amazon FBA business that is going through migrations, like the deal is struck, you sold the business, and during migrating the business, which can take a while with Amazon FBA because you need to work with Amazon, and we all know that's a labyrinthine process. The worst thing possible is like during that you have a stock out, and that can create all sorts of issues, right? Now, you don't have to worry about the extra cost of always having this 3 months of inventory on hand, because almost always the buyer will be buying that product. And so you don't necessarily pay for the inventory. So how a valuation works is you have your actual valuation, and then you have the inventory cost. And usually you get to sell all that inventory at cost to the buyer. So it's a wash for you. It doesn't cost you anything if you're planning on selling this business to have an extra 3 months of good inventory of solid products. Next, and this is the most boring and most important, but also most tedious process, is organizing all of your numbers, your P&Ls, invoices from suppliers, advertising costs, all that kind of stuff, right? And a quick note here is, if you use someone like us, like if you come to Empire Flippers to sell your FBA business, we do all of this for you, and we actually build it from scratch, because in our experience, most e-commerce entrepreneurs have so much going on. This is not something that they're great at. they will come to us, we will help them build their profit and loss statement, and then they realize, oh no, I'm making less money than I expected. Like, I had no idea with all this different stuff going on, or these revenue by products, all that kind of breakdown, right? So if you use us, we'll take care of you on that. But if you don't want to use a broker, I highly recommend you hire a e-commerce bookkeeper of some sort that is familiar with the craziness of e-commerce accounting, because this is an extremely important thing. Your profit and loss statement is kind of like the narrative of your business, and you want to be able to tell a good narrative. And if something is wrong with your P&L, this is often considered like the most important document in your entire business to a buyer. If something's wrong with your P&L, the buyer is going to wonder, well, what else is wrong, right? So keep this all in mind. Again, have really good SOPs, shape them up. If your SOPs are old because you built them like 18 months ago, just do a quick refresh to make sure nothing has changed in your process. If there has, update those SOPs so they're current. And most importantly, and again, this is if you use a broker especially, is clear your schedule. When you are going to sell your business, even when you're using a broker, it's an extra, part-time job, right? You need to commit. One of the biggest things, like we just had a business just recently, I think it was a $2 million business, had multiple competing offers. to make this entrepreneur a multimillionaire. And nothing happened because he simply didn't have time to even respond to us. Now that sounds crazy, but we sell tons of businesses, and this, like, sellers going unresponsive is something that we see. And sometimes it's just like we don't know why they went unresponsive. Sometimes it's because they just didn't clear their schedule. You got to make time if you want to make this kind of exit. So common sense, but we have a lot going on. So it's important to remember to clear your schedule, really commit to it when you get to this point.
Great. So yeah, I mean, and talk a little bit, I think, about, obviously the wider, obviously you're not the only game in town. He's talked about kind of, the wider ecosystem. I think it's important to kind of contextualize there.
For sure, yeah. It's a big ecosystem out there, right? And we'll talk about it in the section actually a little bit. So let's talk about, we'll close this up with some of the biggest traps I've seen FBA entrepreneurs fall into. Now, these traps I've seen, smaller sellers, say a low six-figure entrepreneur fall into, and I have definitely seen it, probably even more, multiple seven-figure and even eight-figure FBA sellers falling into into these traps. So these are pretty insidious myths, and we're going to help you through it so you don't make these kind of mistakes. And the first one is the off-market fallacy. So the off-market fallacy is a very compelling narrative, which is, oh, I don't want to use a broker of any kind because I don't want to pay a commission. I'll make more money by going private. Now, that's sometimes true. Sometimes that is 100% true. Usually, you will almost always, like, if you have a high quality business, you will often sell your business faster, at least if you're a seven-figure FBA deal. If you're smaller, that's usually not true. But what is usually always true, almost always, is when you use a broker of some sort, you will get a better commission. You'll get a higher amount of money. An example of this is we had an FBA entrepreneur. He had a private deal, and there was a lot going on in this list. So you referenced this deal a couple times. He got a private offer for 1.4 million, and he came to us, asked us for our opinion, and we said we could sell this for way more. Not only did we sell it for more, we got him $2.1 million with 1.8 million upfront, so 400K more than his entire offer, plus uncapped revenue sharing based off of milestones over, I think it was over like a 2-year period or something like that. So this guy was extremely happy to pay our commission, right? We made him way more money, and he paid us a much bigger commission than he expected too. So keep this in mind. The off-market fallacy is a real plague in our industry, and it makes total sense from the surface. But when you're operating on my end, I can see how entrepreneurs actually leave a lot of money on the table when it comes to this stuff. And again, not always, I'm not saying private deals are bad, but you got to keep this in mind. Really know your worth, know the road, right? Understand how your valuation works. At least use our valuation tool if you're going to go sell privately, so you can get a rough estimation of what you're worth, right? And the other thing about this, why it's so compelling, is pretty much every buyer under the sun is going to push this narrative too. That from ultra high net worth individual to even aggregators to a certain extent will tell you, yeah, why don't we just do the deal now? We can get it done fast. You don't pay a commission, right? And that sounds great. Like, yeah, they're about to make me a millionaire. They're about to give me 1.4 million. But what they're not telling you is by not letting you go with the broker, they get to buy your business for less, because the main incentive for a buyer to build private deal flow isn't because they want to give you more money. It's the exact opposite. They want to give you less money. They want to buy you under value. And they know if they go with a broker, they're not going to be able to do that because a broker knows the road, right? Just like how they know. They'll still buy from a broker, but they're not going to get as big of a discount with you. And the other thing on that $1.4 million deal, he had 3 days to decide. A lot of savvy buyers will do this, especially for seven-figure FBA entrepreneurs, because it's so compelling. Like, hey, I will give you $1.4 million right now. You have 3 days to decide. What do you think? And that is a lot of pressure. Like, I can become a millionaire literally in hours. All I have to do is say yes. I know they're going to pay me because they're a big aggregator, ultra high net worth individual. I know they have the money. They proved it to me. And that's a lot of pressure. And us as FBA entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, we understand when it comes to marketing using scarcity, right? Scarcity and urgency. And that's what they're using on you. So put on your copywriting hat and remember, don't fall for the urgency, because if you have a high quality business, there are a slew of buyers out there. And that goes into the final thing, which is owning the show. Instead of giving in to that urgency in a private offer, make all these people compete for your brand. That's how you get some of the best deals possible. Especially in the aggregator space, these people are highly competitive, and these are like the best buyers in the world. I love our aggregator customers, but when they see a deal, they will compete fiercely for you for what you have built, because what you have built represents huge amounts of leverage for them. You have built an extremely valuable asset. So they, if you put you go with a broker, you can do this privately too, but it's more difficult. If you go with a broker, you can make all these aggregators compete for you. And some of these aggregators, especially the newer ones, they have told us like, hey, if aggregator A makes an offer, let me know because I will beat it 100%. They're actually using the fact that another aggregator is making an offer as part of their due diligence. Like, well, good enough for them, good enough for me, right? Because they're so hyper competitive of wanting to swallow up all these brands. So it behooves you to make them compete, own that show. Whether you use a broker like us who makes it very easy for you, or do it yourself in a private way, find a way to make these aggregators compete for what you have. Don't fall for the urgency based deal where they're pushing that off market fallacy on you.
Awesome. So I think we have time for questions. Not a ton of time, but we'll get to as many as we can here. I think so. I think maybe this is a good one for you. I think it's a nice question. This is from Kim here. So if my revenue is 100% Amazon FBA, kind of no sales from other platforms, is that kind of bad to sell now? Should I expand to other marketplaces, platforms before selling? I mean, I don't know if Greg, if you have thoughts. I mean, I know, I definitely have some thoughts on that as well, but feel free to kick it off here.
Sure. I sound like a broken record, but it really goes back to what you want, right? Personal business goals. Like we sell pure Amazon FBA business. Most entrepreneurs do not do multi-channel well. They just don't. Like they'll have, like I said earlier, like maybe it's like 97% Amazon FBA and like 3% Shopify. It'd be very insignificant for what they're doing. I think if you have the patience to learn and you're not in a rush to sell, I think doing multi-channel is 100% a good move. Like if you're big on Walmart and Amazon, that's two different channels, a more defensible moat. It will make your business more valuable. For some entrepreneurs or solo entrepreneurs, especially with a small team, it may not be worth it unless you have the patience to learn it. But yeah, it goes either way. One last thing I'll say on that too is taking an FBA business to say a Shopify platform, I think is a much harder transition than vice versa. Like Shopify to Amazon FBA, I think is easier. So you're starting off harder. And the reason why is because like DDC just has more obstacles that you learn. And by doing all those DDC ads to your store, a lot of people will see your name and then just go to Amazon and type in the name and find you to buy it, right? So I'm all for multi-channel if it makes sense for your own personal goals.
Yeah, and I mean, building on that, I mean, what we've seen is definitely, I think, in the aggregator space and the acquisition space, Amazon got obviously the lion's share for good reason, lion's share of attention, I think, over the past year or so. Now, again, all these aggregators are up against each other, so they're looking for these inefficiencies that may be overlooked by some other aggregators. And one of the things looking at are these other marketplaces, so Walmart, eBay, Target, et cetera. Like they're looking as okay, if outside of this Amazon universe, what are their other strengths or the things I could take this Amazon business, move it over to Walmart and get the the promise there. So there are ways that essentially you can leverage that. I think as these aggregators are essentially getting more competitive and the acquisition space is just heating up generally.
100%. One other thing to note on that, it's not just marketplaces. One of our best aggregator customers, I think it's 20% of their growth is coming from DDC acquisitions now. So they're taking those Shopify stores, scaling them up, or Magento stores, whatever they're on, and then they're also going to put them on Amazon, right? Because like I said, it's way easier to take a DDC brand to Amazon than the other way around usually. So yeah, there's tons of opportunities. If you're a multi-channel seller, going to increase your valuation in a big way. If you make it a meaningful, if it's 1-2%, probably not worth it. But
yeah. All right, we got probably time for one or two more questions. So this one, kind of more basic one, but I think it's important, is just Nadia asked kind of where can we find the conversion rate for ads? So definitely look in Seller Central. You should see this for kind of every ad group you're running, every campaign. You should see kind of that rate, again, conversions vis-a-vis clicks. How many conversions came from those clicks? That's right. That's your conversion rate. Obviously, Teikametrics, we can obviously break this down for you within the app itself, but that's right there, and this is something that, again, you want to monitor on a regular basis. So this is a good one. I think maybe a good one to wrap it up from Kevin here for you, Greg, is what are you seeing on the deals you've closed related to overall traffic on Amazon in 2021 versus last year with COVID? I guess, like, how hot was the market now vis-a-vis kind of in 2020, and maybe shedding some light on that, just maybe at a high level.
Sure. Pre-COVID, it was starting to heat up. The first aggregators were really born pre-COVID by like I want to say 8, 9 months. During COVID of 2020, there was a huge COVID bump as entire nations were forced to shop online, basically, right? Now that things are starting to come out, we haven't seen any real dip. And it's important to note here that like there have been a few businesses, but overall the general trend is up. So valuations have remained stable from that huge increase we saw in 2020, which is great for sellers. This is like the first seller's market I've ever seen since I've been in the industry, so it's fantastic for that. But I don't see that going away. Some people fear that like a bubble, like all these valuations are going to pop. But it's important to remember, and I'm sure Andrew probably knows these too, like all the data has been pointing to e-commerce dominating the world for a long time now. So all we're seeing is what we expected to happen in 10 years, happen in about 10 months, right? So that's why I'm seeing the market's still extremely hot. In fact, I think it's even hotter from an M&A perspective than it used to be. Even back in 2020, we're seeing bigger and bigger brands and more aggregators just hungry to swallow up brands, as well as other investors like commercial real estate investors are starting to come to the space. All sorts of people are coming to the space. So now I think is even better than 2020.
Great. Maybe we'll do one more question just because I think it's a really good one, and then we can wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
This is from Barry. He asked, how do non-online sales figures kind of figure in here? And I guess generally, he says we have a traditional channel for kind of a wide range of retailers. I guess, how have you seen that kind of reflected in some of the deals that have closed?
Sure, that's great. So I would assume that means like you're actually on the shelves of some like bigger retail store, like a Target or a Walmart or something like that, right? If you were a boutique person, like we had a person who tried to sell a beauty product with us, and we had to separate the online and offline portions away from each other because the offline portion was literally her spa that she ran in a local town, which we wouldn't be able to do. But in the case of like this, where you're having product on the shelf, that's basically multi-channel. Right? You're in a different marketing channel, distribution channel, and that's going to add to your valuation, not hurt you. So, and I will say, a lot of the aggregators are looking for those kind of deals. A lot of them like that because again, it differentiates themselves from the competitive marketplace, and you've proven it works. If your P&L shows it works, hopefully, right? So that's a really good thing.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. Thanks, Greg, for hopping on this one, and thanks everyone for joining. This was I had a great time, and looking forward to catching up with you all on the next one. And have a great rest of your day. See you soon.